Good morning, everyone. I'm Barry Corcoran, along with Lawson Corcoran, and this is Financially Speaking.
Yeah, good morning, Barry. Good morning, everyone. Barry, we have a great topic of discussion today, one that I think will be very helpful for a lot of folks, Social Security. As we've seen in the headlines this year, there's been a lot of changes in government, a lot of people close to retirement or even in retirement, people that are close to taking Social Security or already taking Social Security benefits are all concerned about the future of Social Security. So I'm gonna share my screen here in just a moment. We've got some slides we want to share with people, but can we first just talk about the state of Social Security and kind of where things sit right now?
Well, yeah, and I think one of the things I want to comment on is the fear and concern. And as everyone knows, I've been doing this for 42 years, and people have been afraid of Social Security. Um, 4 decades ago, it's not going to be there when I retire, and it is. And so there's always been this fear that Social Security is not going to be around, and so it kind of seems to come in waves. And I find that interesting. Of course, a lot of it is political, but there's people who are really concerned, and it's really important for people in their 20s and 30s because they may totally dismiss Social Security that might even be around when they get to retirement age, and so I think it's important for everyone to really understand how Social Security works, how it functions, why we see headline news that causes fear and concern, and what the reality is. So we've done a little bit of research that we think you'll find real interesting. Lawson?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have several slides here. There's a lot of information on each slide, but that is on purpose. We want people to be able to pause their screen when they're watching this or listening to this, and be able to read along and take screenshots if they need to. But we just want everyone to have some important information. So what I'm going to do is kind of read through each slide, and then we can discuss as we go. First off, state of Social Security. So payroll tax revenues exceeded benefits paid between 1984 and 2009. So that led to a surplus built up in the OASDI trust fund. So we've got those reserves there. But as of recently, the last 15 years, Social Security's expenditures have actually exceeded tax receipts since 2010. And that there's a couple reasons for that. We'll get to that in a moment. Aging population, less people working. There's kind of an imbalance between benefits being paid out and the tax revenue received to fund those benefits. So obviously that's resulted in these ongoing withdrawals from that trust, that Social Security trust fund. And that's through the sale of these U.S. Treasury securities.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's important for people to realize that first point is that we all work and we have to pay payroll taxes. Everybody knows that. Well, that money goes into the Social Security fund, and for the people who are retired or getting benefits, takes money out of the same fund. And I think the misconception is that as it says there in the chart, there was a period where there was an excess or a reserve that was built up. In other words, there were so many people working so much paid in that it created more cash than benefits that were taken out, and so the source of revenues for Social Security benefits are workers' wages. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So part of the reason this is happening, um, primary factor is the country just getting older. There's less people working. So there were 3.3 covered workers in 1985 per Social Security beneficiary, while in 2023 there's only 2.7. So you see that there's a decline in people actually working. This, obviously leads to lower taxable payrolls, lower taxes to fund Social Security.
Yeah. So the point here is that in the future, if we have more workers, a growing economy, and there's more workers in the workplace and get that ratio up to 3.3 instead of 2.7, then that would add stability to the Social Security Reserve, Social Security system. So it's all about people working, jobs and growth of the economy is the primary cash flow for Social Security benefits. I don't want people to think that there's just a benefit that's being paid and it's part of the federal budget to actually fund Social Security benefits. There's a direct relationship between workers' payroll taxes and benefits being paid out.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this is a great slide to talk about the timeline. So right now, for the next 9 years, I mean, this chart is built out in 2024, but until about 2035, we can pay out 100% of benefits to those that take Social Security. In 2035, right now, it's estimated that this trust that we pull on, those reserves are going to be depleted. And so we're only going to be able to pay out 83% projected as of now in 2035. And then that'll step down in 2098, at the end of the century. So that's really what people are concerned about is, hey, you know, right now, based on these projections, I'm not going to get the benefit I thought I would.
Yeah, I think that's very good and an illustration for sure that it's not going broke. Social Security is not growing broke. There's just not enough cash flow to pay 100% of the benefits up to 2035. And if you're on Social Security, you'd get a reduction of 17% just based on cash flow. And then beyond 2098, there's enough cash flow based on their projections to pay 73% of the stated benefits. So we have to talk about solutions to this dilemma. What changes need to be made in order to have 100% benefits for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to point out: some of the numbers on these slides are just projections.
Sure.
They're just kind of assumptions, and so we obviously don't know the particular amount that's going to be stepped down if we do run out in 2035, or if that's 2034, 2033. We're just kind of speaking on this in principle. So this next slide, this kind of talks about what's the worst case scenario if we do run out. So again, the bulk of funding for paying out these Social Security benefits comes from payroll taxes, those FICA taxes. Worst case scenario is that we continue just to pay the majority of those benefits, those Social Security benefits, that are only covered by the ongoing receipt of payroll tax revenue. So again, if nothing is done to address this situation, that means the worst case scenario is that almost 4/5 of benefits are still paid out for the rest of the century. So I think that's really important because a lot of folks are just concerned. Oh my gosh, I'm just not going to have this period. I'm not going to have this benefit period, and
Yeah.
that's not actually the case.
Yeah. A planning point is Social Security was never developed to be your retirement. Social Security was development to assist in your retirement. And that's why the government has 401ks and IRAs and urge everyone, particularly people in their 20s and 30s, to use the value of time and the effect of compounding to accumulate wealth. And that's your primary source of retirement income, and that Social Security just supplements that. And so that's why Congress passes law to have tax incentives to save money for retirement.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I also think on top of that, people are just living longer. They're
Oh,
spending longer in retirement. You factor in inflation, people are spending more. And so I think, yes, as you said, relying just on Social Security benefits for retirement and care is just not going to cut it. And so that's where that other planning comes in. The investing in other, tax deferred accounts and tax advantage accounts really helps. So
yeah,
the
yeah,
next part of this, what we want to discuss is kind of the options. And again, we don't want to get too in the weeds with the numbers and get with the numbers behind the legislation or the policies that have been proposed, but we just kind of want to give people an idea of how many options there are out there for the government to kind of fix this issue. So here's one of the first option. Option one is just to raise payroll taxes. So this would enact an immediate and permanent increase to payroll taxes of 3.33%, bringing the whole Social Security portion of FICA taxes to 15.73%. 73%. And that's quite large, obviously. So that means a household earning about 75,000 a year would pay about 2,500 a year in additional payroll tax. Um, and a good reminder is that this payroll tax is only assessed on earned wages. It's not a tax on any other income stream. So anytime you take money out of a taxable brokerage account or you pull on money from an IRA or a 401k, that's not affected by this tax. So that does have significance for different types of investors and different types of taxpayers. But that's kind of our first option here.
Yeah. So the comment is that one way is you got to increase cash flow, and that's by raising taxes, and that kind of 3.33% increase in Social Security taxes would bring that total to over 15% of your payroll going into Social Security to pay current and future beneficiaries, and the increase would be almost more than $200 a month for someone making $75,000 a year, and for people making 168,000, almost another 6,000 additional of what they're paying, and so you can see that there'd be some pushback over this solution. Real easy solution: more revenues, raise taxes. Probably not going to be the only solution to this dilemma.
Yeah, absolutely. So another option, um, you can reduce benefits for all beneficiaries. So this would enact an immediate and permanent through basically the end of the century reduction of about 20.8% of scheduled benefits for those currently taking Social Security and future beneficiaries. And again, this would allow the system and the fund to pay out benefits through the pretty much the end of the century, 2098. What that would mean, the math of it, again, this is kind of an estimate, but that would reduce, if someone was receiving an average monthly benefit of about $1,900, they would see about a $400 a month decrease. Same for if someone was receiving the maximum benefit of 4,800 roughly per month, they would see about a reduction of $1,000 a month. So that's another option, similar to taxes. It's going to upset a lot of people. That's not something people want to see. Is, hey, you're going to decrease my benefit just so we can continue to pay out. It doesn't sit well with a lot of people.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you can imagine that Congress is announcing consideration of reducing Social Security by 20%, the lobbyists would just go full force against that notion. And so would it be fiscally responsible? Hey, we're going to match up benefits with cash flow. Yeah, that would be fiscally responsible. But is that likely to happen? Not very popular. Probably very, very difficult to do.
Absolutely. Moving on to another option, this would reduce benefits only for those taking Social Security in the future. So it would maintain the benefit levels for current beneficiaries, but there would be a higher reduction than the last option, about 24.8% reduction for future recipients. Anybody that would be, eligible. This says 2024 or later based on those projections, but obviously at the end of this year or later. Obviously, this would be really unfortunate for those nearing retirement that have kind of banked on Social Security being X amount, their benefit being X amount, and they would have less time to plan for that change.
Yeah, I think this kind of an option just requires a longer transition, and when we're talking about multiple decades, it would require a glide path to get to that reduction in future benefits, and so that those younger people would be able to prepare better. I think that that would be a challenge as well. And it was probably a fairness factor that would come under this option. Let's take a look at the next one.
This option means raising taxes through other sources of income. As we discussed previously, uh, you know, a lot of the revenue is coming just through payroll tax, but Congress could decide to subject all wages to tax. So this would obviously have a larger effect on higher income clients than would an across the board payroll tax increase. So this means pulling on other streams of income, like we talked about earlier, any sort of taxable brokerage account, any other sources of unearned income. So this combined with a 1.35% increase in the payroll tax itself would fully close the 75-year shortfall that we currently see.
Yeah, this option it uses kind of a combination increased revenues by raising taxes and then a smaller increase for everyone across the board for additional Social Security taxes. So that's kind of a combination of the two. Of course, it would be popular for some people because people who make more than $168,000 would be paying more Social Security tax than they have in the past, but everybody would have a 1.35% increase. So that kind of a combination, might be easier to swallow because it affects everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And this last option or this chart really it shows several different options that can close the gap. We're not going to walk through a lot of these just because they're kind of they're kind of niche ideas. It kind of require some nuance, but as you can see,
Yeah.
there's plenty of policy options.
Yeah, I think that the point of this chart is that we've talked about these four different general types of options of changes that could be made to maintain 100% benefits in the Social Security system. But there's a myriad of other ways, tweaks or changes to make either in the benefits or the revenues, many different combinations that could be done. And from our point of view, making multiple small changes are probably easier than one big option or another big option of big changes. So it's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm someone listening to us talk about these options and talk about the concern that we're going to run out of money from the Social Security Trust, um, I'm kind of sitting there saying, all right, you've explained the problem, you've explained the options, but why is something being done? Can I expect this problem to be fixed? This slide here, we say obviously there are plenty of policy options that can fix the problem. Why hasn't it been done yet? Politics.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you walk through those different options that would be solutions to this dilemma, it's all politically sensitive, very politically sensitive. But raising taxes, who gets hit most, who gets hit the least? How do you affect benefits, current beneficiaries, older beneficiaries? But these are hard decisions that Congress is going to need to make at some point in the future, and they're politically unpopular or difficult or challenging. But it's extremely important for those people who have very little to live on, didn't prepare well for retirement, that there needs to be some fiscal responsibility. One last note, I forgot to mention that when you have this surplus, this excess in the reserve, I think they're investing those in U.S. Treasury bills and notes that are earning around 2 or 3 or 4%. And another solution is if the Treasury would actually invest that in stocks or some other investment that got higher rate of return. So there's all kinds of options, and we just hope that we begin to see more dialogue and conversation in the community when you communicate that to your representatives and senators about what your thoughts are and ask them to do the physically responsible thing to maintain your benefits and Social Security.
Yeah. So last thing I want to share is this excerpt from a story we read, about the last time that Social Security was kind of amended, that the program took on some changes. So this was, over 40 years ago now. There were in 1975, we were in a similar situation as to now, where the trust expenditures had begun exceeding the tax revenue, and they were estimating that, hey, by July 1983, we're going to be running out of money. We won't be able to pay the fully scheduled benefits. And what happened in April 1983, less than 3 months before benefits were going to have to be reduced, the amendments were passed. And so the bottom line of this, I love this last little bullet point because it's so, the way they say it is just funny to me. It says this previous experience suggests that bipartisan compromise is easier to obtain when the specter of a system unable to pay out fully scheduled benefits becomes increasingly salient. So, in other words, politics are going to be politics. The politicians are going to procrastinate, and they won't get something done until it absolutely has to be done. They're going to come in fourth quarter, buzzer beater shot, and they're going to pass whatever needs to be passed to get people their scheduled benefits, because politicians, they have an interest in being reelected, and that's really hard to do when you've got a lot of people back home that are voting for you, that are upset about, hey, Social Security benefits are being reduced. So
But we don't know how this is going to play out, but we do want you to know that Social Security is not going to run out of money unless there are no workers in the United States, no payrolls. So we don't foresee that to happen. And we just need to observe, encourage our elected officials to be fiscally responsible, make some tough choices and decisions, and eliminate this fear and concern that people have about their Social Security benefits. Not only for those in their 50s and 60s and 70s, who are going to live for another 3 or 4 decades, but those in their 20s and 30s as well, because all of us put a lot of money in that system, and
yeah.
we deserve to have our benefit.
And one last idea, you talked about this earlier, but Social Security isn't designed just to fully fund your retirement and your care. It's supposed to be a supplement. And so obviously you got politicians over here, you've got legislation. We're not in control of that. We don't, we don't know what's going to happen with that, but we can control all the stuff over here, our personal accounts, our retirement accounts, our cash flow projections. We can control our investment portfolio. So that's the planning we like to do with people is, hey, what can we control that's going to factor in if you have a reduction in benefits? A lot of the way we look at portfolios is to factor in the longevity. Some people don't think they're going to live to age 92, but people are just living longer. And you may live to 94 and you don't want to run out of money. And so we want to make sure that people have, that financial piece, that security, and saying, hey, I've got a portfolio that's set up for decades from now. I don't have to just fully rely on just Social Security. I've got plans for this. So
That's what we like to do. If you have any questions or concern, please reach out to us. I'm Barry Corcoran along with Lawson Corcoran. This is Financially Speaking. It's August the 22nd, 2025. Have a great weekend and have a great Labor Day weekend.